Good evening. President Museveni has unveiled 11 measures to provide liquidity to private firms that have been affected by the COVID-19 lockdown. These include delays in paying taxes and payee, a waiver of interest on tax arrears, payment of outstanding VAT refunds, and payment of domestic arrears of goods and services supplied to government by the private sector, among others. Government is also looking at realigning the next financial budget to emphasize spending on the most critical sectors of the economy. But will these measures resuscitate the economy badly hit by the pandemic? Tonight, we are joined by David Bahati, State Minister of Finance for Planning, Godba Tumushabe, Associate Director, Great Lakes Institute for Strategic Studies, and Honorable Leandro Komakech, Member of Parliament representing Gulu Municipality. Mr. Tumushabe and Honorable Leandro Komakech, we thank you very much for having honored our invitation. And you should also say the Minister of State for Finance in charge of planning, the Honorable David Bahati, is joining us by Skype. Warm welcome to all of you, gentlemen.
Thank you so much.
We've been waiting for the State of the Nation address because it is that address that we think is supposed to tell us how we have fared in the last 365 days, but also give us a projection of a country where we are supposed to be. And before I even get into questions deep into the discussion, I just want to know, each one of you, your appreciation of the State of the Nation address. Let me begin with you, Mr. Godba Tumushabe.
Yeah, thank you very much, Patrick. Good evening, our viewers. Essentially, the State of the Nation address is actually a very, very significant activity or constitutional requirement. And that's why it is made actually constitutional. So it's a constitutional requirement, and it's not something that you can just take lightly. And in essence, the State of the Nation address is supposed to be an appraisal of the year that has ended, and then it looks into the future, what the government plans to do as you move forward. First of all, as I said, you want to make sure that you can give a full account of what transpired during the course of the year in terms of the achievements, in terms of the milestones. But most importantly, you look into the future and you deal with the question of projections, but also inspiration, because the State of the Nation address is more than just rolling out figures and statistics. It's about how do you inspire a nation you bring the nation together. You give a speech that brings the nation together, appeals to the best of every citizen to come together and say, we are building a nation together. And so so when you are assessing the address, you are looking at a number of things. One, you are looking at the content of the address. You are looking at the mode of delivery. You are also looking at to what extent has that address mobilized the people to say, yes, we think we are part of the vision of going into the future that the president has articulated.
Okay. Yeah. The Honorable Leandro Komakech. Yes, but should I be saying Gulu Municipality or Gulu City? Your appreciation of of the president's
Yes,
speech.
Commander, I would request that you allow me to remove the mask.
So long as,
since morning,
I'm supposed to protect you and you protect me.
No, since morning.
So, will you protect me?
Yes. Since morning, we have been in this thing up to now. Yeah. So
but
just allow me to breathe openly.
Okay. But Patrick is also not a scientist, so he can't even allow you.
Know. Just for now.
But now this thing you have.
Yeah. It is our daily, thing.
Okay.
Well, Patrick, the President's State of the Nation address today was to begin the new session, which is the last session of Parliament as the 5th session. That was proclaimed by the Speaker this afternoon. And a State of the Nation, in terms of what the framers of the Constitution put, is about bringing the country together. It's about doing reflection. Where are we coming from? Where are we going? And in a sense, is all about how do we work together as Ugandans amidst the challenges that we have? How do we agree to solve them as we move forward. And that is what the State of the Nation address is supposed to look at. For this period, I think it has been predominated by the COVID-19 issues, which I think was part of the dominant pillars of the president's speech. And of course, we are also struggling in terms of, before COVID, we are struggling. But we believe that what the president made today should be policy. In terms of we as members of parliament, we believe we shall debate this speech. But I think the greatest of all which we need to be extracted from this speech is about policy action. There are a lot of challenges, of course, that the president raised, and there are good things he said, but also he made this speech as if he was making a maiden speech of 1986. If you remember, he talked about the 10 points program. For those who did not know the 1986 maiden speech, this was the speech. That 10 points program, number one this, number two this. But he said today,
this was the speech
by
a completely different man.
But it was
now.
only COVID now, you know.
A completely different man now.
Yes.
Because
I was wondering today what happened. Because the issue of integrated self-sustaining economy, you know, those were the in thing in those days. And today he said we shall emphasize 5, 9, and 10. That is what he stated in this speech, which is okay. So I was wondering for all these people.
Why is it okay?
Yeah, what's going on? So we need to have a deeper reflection on this speech.
But like we have,
it was not bad, but I think we need. Why is it that he really emphasized this?
Okay.
Did we go completely off track? Were we off? You know. So we shall discuss it here, and we see how we move forward.
Hearing from both of you, you seem to say that the speech or the State of the Nation address is supposed to be looking through how we have fared in a year. But it looks like every time I listen to President Yoweri Museveni's State of the Nation address, he's giving us a lesson in history about the country. And I'm like, okay, but must he always be taking us to Luwero or to all those places that were in Zori, 1986 and 10-point program and all the kind of stuff? I know we read the Bible and always the things are the same, and Christianity has been talking about the same thing for the last 2,000 years. Is that the tactic that after all you go to church and they tell us to repent and they have never stopped that kind of gospel? But we have a minister who is a cabinet minister who is going to be joining us on Skype. I suppose we could be now having the Honorable David Bahati. I think my producer is trying to connect to Honorable David Bahati, because I just wanted to throw this question at him as a cabinet minister and also being a minister of state for planning, and some of these things are right in his docket, and I suppose soon we shall be getting him because he needs to respond to some of these things. Let me go to those two things he talked about, the vulnerable economy and the real economy. And just a couple of minutes ago, I was speaking to an economist who seemed, and of course the PS Minister of Finance, Mr. Keith Muhakanizi, and the lecturer, Mr. Ramadan Gobi. And they seem to agree, yes, there is a real economy, agriculture and stuff like that, but what do they need to do before we even define real and non-real to add more strength to what they call real? For example, agriculture, you know, give it water, give it, go into agro-processing, you know, boost it so that the reality becomes real. What's your take about the dichotomy of real
No, you see, Patrick, first of all, I want to say that I was quite intrigued today that for the first time, the president actually read the written speech. In most cases, he goes to parliament and really, you know, speaks casually, cracks jokes with members of parliament, even when it's a State of the Nation address. So you would really want to give him credit that for once, he basically read through the speech. If you had the speech, you could actually follow what he was reading. And I think that was quite incredible in terms of like, yeah, this is how you deliver a speech. The only problem came at the end when he said they also added there something, and then it was like who added? Because this is supposed to be your speech. But as far as the economy is concerned, I really, actually, I'm very worried about the way we are always diverted by the president. Because you see, if you think of think about the sloganeering that we've had, right from Ntandikwa to Bonabagagawale, to Operation Wealth Creation. These are slogans.
Lembeka.
Kulembeka. They are slogans. Remember that from 2010, 2011, the president started talking more about middle income. So every discussion, including whether they were MPs, whether they were government officials, they were saying, oh, we are working to achieve middle income status by 2020. Now, you must be surprised if you are a policy analyst that the president all of a sudden can deliver a State of the Nation address without any reference to middle income, without any indication of whether we are moving towards that status or not. I find that quite intriguing, which brings me to my point to say, real economy versus vulnerable economy. I think this is sloganeering, because what is it that is different? Agriculture remains agriculture. ICT remains ICT. Industry remains industry. So giving it a name called real economy, how does that change what we do as a country? And remember that the things that you're talking about, the basics, you know those basic things in life, those things you study them in high school. So it's not rocket science. Shelter, housing, food, and everything. That's not rocket science. So I'm quite concerned that all of a sudden everybody in the government, in parliament, they are going to start now a conversation about real economy versus vulnerable economy, which actually, when it has no meaning, instead of focusing on how do you transform this country from where it is, because agriculture is here. I was quite intrigued that the president is reading statistics and saying that in the month of April, we exported $6 million worth of maize. Me, if I'm contributing the president's speech, I don't think that that's a figure that you want a president to read out, because you see, $6 million
For a nation.
For a nation, this is you are like maybe a medium-sized enterprise. A company, let's say a company like Movit, should be making $6 million. Now you write a State of the Nation address, and you tell the citizens that government of Uganda, a whole country, exported $6 million worth of maize. You really have to think.
I know you
deeper.
want them grand, but if that is a statement of fact, what would you want them to say?
No, you want
because that's exactly what they exported.
Yeah, but
then the Minister of Agriculture, the members of Parliament, and people like you will say there is a problem. Because
in that case, you don't
whitewash
in fact, I think one of the biggest problems that we have is that President Museveni never recognized his failures or the failures of his government. It's only once, I think, in the area of service delivery that he tries to be modest. My view is that if we got the president to be modest enough to recognize some of these failures and shortcomings, it would be a major step on how we begin to think about doing the most painful and transformative things to go into the future.
I think being factual and stating how the state of the nation in terms of what we exported, coffee or maize, that is our
Patrick,
state.
I think you are missing my point.
No, I'm not. I'm thinking, let him tell us the way it is. Let it take us in a shock therapy. We say, look, we have a problem.
No, you see that my point is that he doesn't tell you that at the shock therapy. He's telling you that to tell you that we have made a lot of progress. That's my concern. So, in other words, if the president said, guys, we are doing very bad.
Well, for me, my interpretation was like, okay, I think there's a problem here. Because, look,
the president doesn't look at it that way.
The projection was by 2020, this country should be able to produce 20 million bags of coffee. Now we're producing 5 million bags of coffee.
7 million actually.
7 million bags of coffee. No, my figures are telling me 5 million bags of coffee, according to UCDA.
From the speech, the president says it's 7 million.
7 million bags. But now we are short of 13 million bags of coffee in 2020. And the projection was 20 million bags. So I think you members of parliament, your job now is to task whoever you should say, look, this was a plan. This is where we're supposed to go. How come we have fallen so short?
I think just speaking from Council Godber and yourself, the most important thing, if you heard the president very clearly, he emphasized real economy and then he came into this leisure and pleasure stuff. But I thought all these are real economies.
That's what I think.
Right?
Yeah.
With my, I still remember my economics, the
High
advanced
school-
level
high school.
economics, high school, which was very serious.
Yes.
You know, I think when you mentioned mixed economy, I thought that is what we should have emphasized, because mixed economy, we went completely off when we started going full blast on this neoliberal economic agenda, where everything else was to be determined by the market forces. All resources must be allocated in the market. Now, to begin today to say that, look, let's get back to number 10, integrated, self-sustaining and all these things, and mixed stuff started coming. We are beginning to get out of the amnesia that Uganda's economy can well be managed if it is through a mixed agenda. One, there is no way you can subject Uganda's economy to the market forces 100%, the way we have been doing. Actually, if we had a lot of government intervention in running this economy, from that time that we talk about, from independence, we would be far away. But now that we have started today, it is not late for the next generation. For us, we are at the tail end of things. So for me, my thinking was about, when he talked about real economies and all this, you find that those who are actually sustaining this economy are these local people we talk about,
So,
the private sector.
The informal
But of
sector.
course, there is, in economic terms, those we call the subsistent, sector. That is what is holding this economy. That is my father, my mother, your uncle, and what these guys in the villages. Actually, the president mentioned today clearly that we have been in position to hold into this COVID crisis because of what the people in the villages are doing. The foods in Kampala are coming from where? Is it from any big company? No.
Yeah,
So at the end of the day, how do we make the incidence of impact in terms of even the what the president is talking about, the stimulus? Because the stimulus, in its sense, in its real economic sense, is about, if you make the statement today, next week, we must begin to see that it is being rolled out. So when is this going to happen?
but, you know,
So for me, that is where I'm very worried. I don't want this to be a
as a member of
speech.
parliament,
Yes.
one of your jobs is actually to discuss the budget proposals of government and also appropriate funds.
Yeah.
So we are looking forward to your parliament, where you sit, to be able to say whether it is real economy, and say, now let's put money into production, money that is going to stimulate this economy.
Yeah, yeah.
Are you members of parliament going to do this?
Well,
Because
I think,
we are going to count on you. It's
Yeah,
your
yeah.
job.
Yeah, yeah.
The minister of the Honorable Kasaija will come. He will be representing the president, because the president essentially is the minister of finance.
Yeah.
The Kasaija will just be reading the budget for him.
Yeah.
That's what he does.
Yeah.
And you are the people who are supposed to appropriate the money.
Yeah.
But sometimes you don't put the money in what he calls the real economy.
Well, I think just to touch on before Godbert talks, when we were given the assignment, when COVID struck, Parliament put in place a task force to study the economic impact of this COVID-19 in the economy. And the report was put in Parliament, and we are very happy that in this report, the recommendations that the task force made to the executive, we are at least very happy that many of them came out in the president's speech. And he actually assured us that the Minister of Finance will actually come with the rest in the budget, and which we expect it will be good. But for us, the most important thing, when these recommendations were made, and now we want to see to what extent are we going to accelerate the implementation, is where we are very worried. And that is why Parliament, immediately after budget, we should insist to see how we monitor the implementation of the stimulus. That is where the biggest challenge is. But of course, you hear about giving 1 trillion to UDB.
Yeah, that's
We are even questioning who are these companies going to benefit from UDB. We
Okay.
do not want to see.
That's the question I wanted us to put.
Exactly.
Because it looks like the people I've spoken to in the last couple of hours after the State of the Nation address, they seem to see a silver lining on the dark cloud. Because when the president suggests that there's going to be 1 trillion shillings into Uganda Development Bank and maybe 100 billion to Uganda Development Corporation, that will help to provide long-term financing at a cheaper kind of interest, and perhaps that's a good thing. You're a policy analyst. What do you make of this?
No, I mean, I have argued time and again that if there is one thing that we should be doing as a country is to put money in these entities, but also provide strategic guidance and direction on how this money is used and invested in the economy. First of all, UDB, well, that's good because it's a development bank, and I think it's an investment of 1 trillion. I'm assuming this is per year.
Yeah,
because if you do 1 trillion just as a lump sum and finish, I don't think that you are still talking big. I think that the 100 billion for UDC, I think that's a joke, because you see, when you want to transform a country, you want to put your money where your mouth is, because it doesn't make sense to allocate. I think the last budget, you guys had allocated about close to 100 billion to the president's gift budget. You can't allocate 100 billion for the president to go around, distributing to people, and you put 100 billion for development corporation. And I think it's a big joke. I think that I would say in the very least, get some 500 billion per year and put it in UDC, but also task UDC to be able to account how they are utilizing this money. So that's UDB, that's UDC. I think that without an independent study, this country should not put money in microfinance, because nobody has told us what really these microfinance schemes do. What have they delivered in terms of output, in terms of jobs? Unless I haven't seen these studies. I don't know if Leandra in Parliament, if you have gotten any studies that tell you that this is how you do it. I mean, this budget is going to come to to Parliament.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be shocking, but I think maybe we shouldn't be shocked that you are going to pass money called Demioga. The president talked about it even today, the money that you give to these groups and whatever, which is basically political money. I think that the president needs to be helped to do the politics, give him some money, but then you want to redirect money that needs to do business, that needs to increase output, that needs to create jobs into things that make sense. You don't want to do the things that they keep on running around. We've given money to 10 young people, and then we say, oh, we are creating jobs. So I'm looking for things that are transformative, because I've argued time and again that COVID, and the president tried to say it, but I don't think that he got it properly. COVID could have been our shock therapy. That because it has come, it found us literally unprepared, both in terms of the public health infrastructure to deal with to cope, but also in terms of the economy. And the main strategy that we could do, like many other countries, was to hide away people. In other words, you hide the people, you lock them up, hide them away from the virus. But you could actually have done it different. So if this could be a shock therapy, that when the Leandras go to Parliament and get this budget, that you guys have the courage to tell Mr. Government, to tell the president and say, we can't do business as usual. It has to be different. You probably will have helped the president, because the president seems to believe in this real economy discussion, but you could help him put content rather than general discussions. That you put content and say, if it's agriculture, yes, we want to produce, because he has listed all the crops. I want to have a target that I can meet. If it is coffee, we say 20 million by 20 million bags by 2020. This is 2010. I want to see progressively I am moving to 20 million. I don't want to reach 20 million and then I'm producing 7 million
20,
bags.
20,
Yeah, because
Okay.
that is basically a declaration of failure as government.
At least Godbade agrees that injecting money in Uganda Development Bank is a good thing, and that could help in giving providing long-term financing. But now, you know, the sweetness of the pudding is in testing. That's what they say.
Yeah, yeah.
Are you really? Is Parliament really going to put that money? Because he could make that projection, he could make that pronouncement, but at the end of the day, actually money is not put there like they have said at the tune of 1 trillion. That could just be a statement that at the end does not translate into actual money. But let me go to now the Honorable Minister of State for Finance in charge of planning, Honorable David Bahati, is joining us by Skype, and thank you very much, David, for taking some time to speak to us. We've just been analyzing the State of the Nation address, and quite a number of people, you know, there's mixed reaction, if I can tell you this. There are those who are happy that at least money is going to be found to be put into those entities like UDB and UDC, and then we want also maybe a bigger clarification from you on the real economy and the vulnerable economy. But also if you can tell us about this whole thing of called the Myoga, the money that the president is giving to groups of people. How do you reach this decision of the Myoga? David Bahati, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kamala, and people in the studio. We are very grateful that you are hosting us today. First and foremost, I think this was one of the best speeches of His Excellency the President on the state of the economy. I've listened to State of the Nation. I've listened to speeches on both sides of the Atlantic on the economy in the East African community. But if you listen to what His Excellency has talked about today, I think it speaks to the needs of the people through the real economy versus the vulnerable economy. And as some people have mentioned already in the studio, focusing on the basics of life: shelter, food, security, health, infrastructure, spirituality, and others. So His Excellency the President today has really outlined the stimulus that can oil the wheels of our economy and breathe fresh air in the lungs of our development. And that's why he focused on issues to do with financing through UDB that will really focus on supporting import substitution by providing cheap capital at an interest rate of less than 12%. The 1 trillion that we are putting in UDB is to help the manufacturers and small-scale industry, small-scale businesses that are focusing on substituting the things, the 7 billion that His Excellency the President talked about. Now, the small and medium companies can access UDB, but how about the credit and saving schemes in our villages, in our towns? That's why we come in now. The President emphasizes the issue of a Myoga. Remember, a few months ago, the Minister of State for Microfinance has been working through the directions of the Cabinet and His Excellency the President on organizing communities around 16 enterprises. People who are involved in welding, people are involved in carpenter, the border borders, the young people who are involved in agriculture that cannot really reach these big commercial banks. So there's so that we are putting, which is cross enterprises that are already ongoing and the one that we have been organizing. We're also putting 50 billion in microfinance to again those small, medium credit and saving skills, institutions that cannot reach the big banks like UDB and commercial banks. His Excellency the President spoke about investing money, 100 billion in UDC. UDC was formed as an investment arm of our country, purposely to reach where the private sector needs help. For example, it's very hard to attract the private sector, especially in rural areas. And yet the raw materials like cassava in northern Uganda, under the work of Archbishop Odama, to what the president was talking about, to process this cassava into starch for industry. Private sector might not reach there, but we need support of government. That's why we're investing 100 billion. His Excellency the President has talked about 100 billion to help support the private sector that would otherwise would prefer to invest in areas that have a conducive environment, but because a government is interested in these enterprises, will stand side by side with the private sector to support them through the UDC. UDC, for example, is going to be working with the work of Archbishop Odama, as I said, in Mbale, processing coffee, in Luka, processing cotton to support the pharmaceutical industries, and also in Chigezi to process Irish potatoes. So I'm very excited, and I think all Ugandans, a few that I've talked to this evening, they think that what the president has outlined as an economic stimuli, for example, the issues of taxes. If you have been struggling with taxes in this period of COVID, you don't have enough cash flow. His Excellency the President has said, get a relief or pay as you earn, defer it for another 3 months so that you can organize your liquidity issues. Corporation tax,
if you may pause there, if you may pause there on the Honorable David Bahati, you know, you talked about 100 billion that is going to be injected in Uganda Development Corporation, and some people are questioning the judgment there that you give almost 100 billion to the gift pack of President Yoweri Museveni to give whenever he's moving around, and that is for his bag, just giving out, and another 100 billion for development cooperation. I mean, why wouldn't you put more money in our development arm instead of putting almost equal money into the money that is going to be given by the president as a president? But also the issue of the Myoga. How do we ensure that this money is not just going to be used as a political tool? Because, look, we are going into a time of campaigns. How do you get these Myogas and we end up not giving money to the NRM political cadres?
Yeah, first of all, Uganda Development Corporation passes through a number of stages to look for resources. And as we speak, they had a requirement of 150 billion for those projects that are already to support. And that's why we are investing now 100 billion out of the 150 billion that they want. Sorry, Kamara. And then, so it's not enough.
Take a glass of water.
It's not just a matter of putting money. It's not just a matter of putting money in UDC, but what is
all right? With Honorable David Bahati, we
supposed to do there?
Okay.
And what moment? UDC processed projects, as I said, for cassava in northern Uganda, coffee in Mbale, cotton in Iruka, banana, Irish potatoes in Kabale, and these projects that are ready for funding now require 150 billion. And that's the reason we are putting in 100 billion out of the 150 billion to kickstart these projects. Regarding the Myoga, our record for development is very clear. His Excellency the President and the NRM government has never exploited the problems of Ugandans. We address problems of Ugandans. We don't exploit them for our political advantage. And our record has been very clear. And therefore, whether we are going for elections or not for elections, we will support people in the Myoga because we wanted to get these people out of the
Okay. Unfortunately, at that very critical moment, we seem to have lost the line is not very good. Honorable David Bahati, if you are hearing me, please hold on to your point. I just want to let my colleagues maybe respond to you. And if you could stay along, let me give the opportunity to Mr. Godber Tumushabe to maybe also respond to you or even ask you a question, if you could.
Yeah, no, I think first of all, I would actually want to learn more from David on this package, because that's, he basically said, and I even had, actually Leandra almost said the same thing, that the president unveiled a package. I don't know if it's a problem of communication, but what the president said and what is written in his speech is that the Ministry of Finance is proposing. That's what he said, that's what he wrote in his speech, and that's what he read in Parliament.
But what a head of state says becomes policy.
No, you say that's not how policy is articulated. When the president comes, he says, we will invest so much in UDB. We will invest so much in UDC. We will invest so much in Emyoga. Those are policies. When the president comes and says to Parliament and says, Minister of Finance is proposing, the question is, does he want Parliament to discuss the proposals there? Because this is a State of the Nation address. And I want you to get me clear, Patrick and listeners. This is a State of the Nation address. It is an articulation of public policy. So so when you present policy, it's clear. So, but these are proposals. What I had the minister say is that the president has unveiled. Now, these are two completely different things, and I would really want David to explain to the viewers, okay, and say, yeah, this is what government is going to be doing, and we can hold them accountable. And I think the second point that I would really make is on Emyoga. You see, we have a history. We have seen a government give money from the time of Ntandikwa, I think that was after 1996 elections. So we have all these different schemes. Everybody knows that for the last almost 58 years of independence, Uganda is a predominantly subsistence economy. I think even as late as last year, the president was reporting, and I normally take the thing that the president said to be authoritative in terms of data, that we have 68% of our households in subsistence. And this has been the case probably almost from around 2000. So if you are doing Ntandikwa, and you're doing youth livelihood program, and you are using women entrepreneurship fund, and your subsistence households are remaining around 68, 69, that's the time for you to get back and say, what is it that I'm doing wrong? Because that means there's something that is not working out that we need to reflect on. And keeping on chest stamping that this is things that we do for us in NRM, this is what we do, I think it's being disingenuous. At the end of the day, you are spending money, very hard-earned money by Ugandan taxpayers, because you are not putting money from NRM bank account. You are putting it from the consolidated fund.
Okay.
So it's something that we
hold
need
on to your
to take
points, and
seriously.
Honorable Komakech, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll come back with you so that you can also make your response to maybe the minister's statement he just made a short while ago. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching On The Spot. My name is Patrick Amara, and my guests tonight are Mr. Godber Tumusabe from the Great Lakes Institute for Strategic Studies. to Mushabe. I come from Fort Portal, so by the way, you need, my
I come from Gulu, so it's worse.
You should even be telling us about
Yeah.
Emyoga. What is by the way, what is Emyoga?
No, Emyoga must be in Acholi.
No, I
It's
don't
not
think
in
we have
Gulu.
anything.
No,
actually
not
called
as far as I
Emyoga.
know.
But you
Like Bonamba Gagawale, what does it? What is it? Kulembeka. all this.
By the way, some of these words, policies that are put into, local languages, I think parts of our country maybe are left behind.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
you
no,
start saying Kulembeka, Bono Gagawali people.
Yes, definitely.
No,
Actually, we
even me,
are
I'm
totally
struggling.
lost in the whole thing.
And this
This
Emyoga
is yoga is new concept. We need a whole
Yeah, I
workshop.
thought Emyoga was Acholi
No,
because I haven't
it's not.
understood.
I don't know what it means.
Yeah.
What does it
Are
mean?
you,
Hey,
what
no.
about you for real?
Yeah?
What does
You
it
don't
mean?
know. I thought, okay, let's
Well,
do that.
I remember.
Okay,
I remember the
please,
word, but
okay.
I don't know how it's
But I
used in
think
this
that's a
context.
project that's going to help the youth of Uganda who are involved in some kind of projects.
Is that your,
inject
is
some
that your
money.
definition?
No, that's what I understand. I don't know the word, but that's how I understand it. And I think, and I'm sure, I'm pretty right. That's
Okay.
what it
The
is.
minister will tell us.
Yes, we also have the Honorable Leandra Komakech, who is a member of parliament representing Gulu municipality. Nowadays, they call it Gulu City. So, well, I just wanted you to respond to, at least you've heard the minister speak, and,
Yeah.
and that's the executive speaking. So what's your take on that?
Well, I could watch the minister speak with a lot of excitement. He's half beat. But the most important thing we need to check is that while the minister is talking about this Emyoga concept that will be mainstreamed at the local level, I think we need to reflect that actually all the subsistence sector that we call in economics are our heroes. These are our local people. They are smallholders
Yeah.
in real sense. They are smallholders. They are our heroes since independence.
Yeah.
They are the ones that have been sustaining this economy. They are the ones sustaining us now. All the food we eat here, look at the quality. If you go to Nakasero market, to Gulu market, to Kabale market, what you get there is organic food being sold.
Yeah.
Now, in this COVID, even those who are foreigners in this country are saying that actually it is easier to live in Uganda
Of course.
than outside there, because these organic foods are the ones actually fighting COVID. If you eat these so-called chips and chicken stuff, I'm telling you, you cannot survive COVID.
That
is why everybody
economic
say-
sabotage now.
Yeah. No, it's not
No, you're
economic
sabotaging
sabotage.
some
But
businesses.
at least what we know is that the local people, plus ourselves who are eating local food, we have a stronger resilience to engage COVID-19. That one is very
Operation
clear.
Malakwang.
Yes, you eat your malakwang, you
Yeah.
eat your gobe or called bo in Acholi,
Yes.
you are stronger. You are more engaged to fight COVID.
I'm not
No.
sure about the scientific whatever.
No, but at least
But I hear you.
that's why when
sentiments are
you
very
look
clear.
at the recovery rate in the country and even the number of deaths in Uganda, tell me how many have died in Uganda.
No, I think Patrick's issues
So,
is
so-
you attributing
so
it
that
to
is medical,
Marakwanga
yeah.
and Gobe.
But let's go to our local foods.
Yeah.
They are our small owners that are supplying our cities. They are the ones that have kept us. So in terms of package, I believe while we are giving UDB, 1 trillion, and then UDC 100 billion, for me, I would like to see how are the small holders in the villages, in the countryside, who are our heroes, going to be beneficiaries of this stimulus? How do we support them in the areas of coffee, in the areas of cocoa, in Bunibuju and all these other areas, in the north in terms of tobacco and many other things? How shall we support them? For me, that is the thinking that the Minister of Finance needs to come very clear on.
Okay.
So that when we are talking of the Emyoga, when we explain the meaning, then we join in knowing where we are going.
Good, but to allow corporations, including small and medium-sized enterprises, to delay payment of corporation tax or presumptive tax for taxes due between April and June 2020, and for tourism. I mean, some of these defer payment of payee by those sectors which are most affected until September 2020, waiver of interest on tax arrears, and paying those who had supplied the government as quickly as possible. These are good things.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. These are good things. they could even have been done earlier, because I don't think that's not rocket science. If you look at every country that has put in place a stimulus package, you'll almost find exactly the same idea. So they are not new, and they are good, because you see the whole essence of these kinds of measures is to make sure that one, you don't extract cash from companies, in which case they will need to, you'll deprive them of capital, which they need to run, but you'll also deprive them the capacity to be able to keep people in their jobs. So you want to make sure that the companies do not lay off people. Secondly, if you defer tax payments, I think countries like Kenya, they even reduced pay as you earn. So in other words, that means that you are leaving more money in the hands of the worker, and that also means that the people have more money to spend. In cases of economic distress, you want the population to have money and to be able to spend. Some countries like Japan, when there is economic contraction, they even give people a holiday. You give them a 1 week holiday. That means that people have time to go and shop, and they stimulate the economy themselves. So the ideas are good. One of the problems with us as a country is that most of the things we plan, they have no timeline. There is always a lot of uncertainty. That's why I'm telling you that in today's address, the president said the Minister of Finance is proposing. For us who work in the area of public policy, my immediate interpretation is that these are not even cabinet proposals. They are ministry proposals. So that means they have not been debated and approved by cabinet. Because otherwise, if the president wanted to propose these ideas to parliament, he would have said government is proposing.
They are still at an initial stage of formulating an idea.
That's what it means. And therefore, there are no timelines. You don't know when they are going to be effective. The policy uncertainty in this country can always be very, very, very disturbing, because uncertainty in public policy actually creates a lot of hidden costs, because the people who are making decisions in business, in the workplace, they all remain uncertain. They are guessing what will happen, what will not happen, and it's very, very bad for the economy.
You know, securing funding for the development of Kampala Industrial Business Park at Namamve, and for power transmission and substation for Mbale, Kapeka, Boyogere, Kasese, Soroti, Luzira, and other places. I think, you know, this Namamve thing, industrial park, they seem to have put quite a lot of, almost in every speech for Uganda's economic development, I always hear Namamve Industrial Park. But that's Namamve Industrial Park. The industries are not there. How come we have seen Namamve Industrial Park, the kind of effort that has been put to that industrial park, and you know, it should have been already transformed by now. And you as members of parliament should be questioning. Another giant thing I've seen is the presidential initiative for that banana production in
that's a money guzzler.
in Yarushanji. How come? You know, I haven't seen Toke flour in the supermarkets of Uganda, and yet Toke flour is what it's supposed to produce.
Well, I think we have a challenge that the Committee of National Economy should take very seriously.
Not to the parliament?
Yeah, of course.
Why are you referring it to the economy?
No,
to
the committee of
National Economy. You are trying to deny responsibility.
No, what I'm saying, that is the committee that is designed to ensure that everything must be monitored and must be audited. And that is what they bring to parliament and is discussed. So I believe that it is very important that they take a critical look at the Namamve stuff we are talking about, because at the end of the day, we need to audit this UDP, the beneficiaries who are going to get the UDP money. Are they just guys in town here? And that's one challenge we have. Because at the end of the day...
Is there any problem guys in town getting money?
What's your hunch?
No, it should spread. It should spread. It should spread. When we talk of balanced or regional development, we are talking of northern Uganda, we are talking of western Uganda, we are talking of central, we are talking of eastern. But if it means we rotate around the Namamve swamps, which actually the president talked about today, that actually, if you have not yet built in a swamp, don't go there. This was the first time I heard about the issue of swamps. Like in northern Uganda, swamps are for spirits. You don't do anything in the swamps. So let's be critical and follow the beneficiaries of the UDB fund. For me, I'm very, very, very anxious to see who are going to be the final beneficiaries. That is when we know the impact is going to be national and is going to take on board everybody that is suffering with
Is
this
it also
COVID-19.
not possible that these 100 billion, you get two people with business ideas that perhaps are bankable, and maybe 5 seconds people can just deplete the resources there, and it's not there for them?
Normally
That is the fear.
Normally that's what happens actually. Because that's why I like the idea that Leandra is putting forward, that the Committee on the Economy, but me, I'm talking about Parliament, because
Yeah,
sometimes
of course, they're part of
sometimes in this country, people try to avoid responsibility by
that
delegating
assignment-
it.
that assignment
That one,
is
the,
big,
the Committee on the Economy, the Parliament must take interest that UDB and UDC or the ministers responsible should be able to report back to Parliament and say this is where the money is going. But having said that, the case of Namamve, when the president was sworn in for this term, he actually came blazing and flexing muscles about the thing Kisanja hakuna mchezo. So in that declaration, he basically said they were going to be developing 25 or 24 industrial parks. Now you realize in this speech he didn't say anything about them. He only talked about Namamve, and yet you would imagine that after 5 years of spending money, and I know money has also been allocated for these industrial parks, you would imagine that the president would give us an update of like this is where we are, but all that is always lacking. Of course, originally I had already said this is a very ambitious agenda. You can't develop 24 industrial parks in 5 years, but at least you would expect that the president would report back to Parliament and say this is how far we've gone. This is how we are moving. So there are lots of unfinished business. But for me, I'm not surprised, because this is how the president reports normally in his State of the Nation address. And the Parliament is basically toothless to actually to demand for very specific things on what is going on. And I think, listening to Minister Bahati, you can say, he's very happy with what has been said, even when they are inconclusive. I would imagine that members of Parliament will sit there, start debating, and they may actually not even deal with the content. They could spend a lot of time discussing vulnerable and real economy and end there. And I'm going to be watching to see how this happens, because as a country, we have a lot of business to do. And I think that, the president, of course, the president is tired. 35 years in power is not a small thing. You have to give him credit that he can still come and actually almost pretend that he's saying something new. So I think that he's tired, and the Parliament needs to help him.
I think
to
we
be
need
able
to start,
to
we need to
move
start
things there.
thinking big and doing things, grand things, because when
Grand
you look at
thing-
Africa's
yeah.
contribution to the global economy,
Yeah,
just 3%.
Yes,
Yeah.
just 3%.
1.2 billion people contributing only 3%, and we're talking about a global
bigger
economy
resources.
of
Yeah.
trillions of,
Natural
Yeah,
trillions
with
of
the-
dollars.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
So and what is Uganda's contribution to the global
Hey,
economy?
and you say you know,
So
it's quite frustrating. Yeah.
So if we start manufacturing, we have to manufacture things that can compete in the region, but also that can compete at the global scale. And in this COVID, if God is saying it's supposed to be some kind of a shock
sent.
therapy, so that we can start moving, then we
Get
have,
out of
we
the
have
comfort zone.
the issue of import substitution should not just be a talk, but also you're not going to have import substitution tomorrow, because you have to invest now, you have to develop skills, you have to industrialize, so that maybe in the next 1 year you can start thinking of import substitution.
Well, just to pick from there and add on what Godbar said, we have challenges. When we heard of import substitution, yes, we need to roll it out. Export promotion, yes. But the challenge is that we now need to be dealing with. That is actually lying there with its tail. When we visited Europe last year, in Netherlands and in Brussels, one issue that was emerging from the European market that actually I presented that report to Parliament was about our export standards. What we send to Europe, almost 80% are thrown out because of aflatoxins. These are these bacteria and all these issues.
I know of a gentleman.
So,
If I could, I know
Yes.
of a gentleman
yeah,
who was contracted to go and demand payment for the goods that had been supplied from Uganda
Yeah.
to one of the Eastern European countries.
Yes.
And so, because he knew he wanted this much, they had sent their goods, and in fact, included beans. And so he was there. He was angry. He said, look, we have sent our goods. It's so many months. You have not paid. This is what you took. So why are you guys quiet? So they took him to the store
yes,
where the Ugandan goods were.
yeah,
So they said, okay, put your hand in one of the bags
Yeah.
that had beans
yeah,
and removed.
Yeah.
And when they came out, the beans had stones,
Yeah.
they had some weevils, they had so many impurities,
yeah,
Yeah.
and they put them there. That the man who was angry,
Yeah.
he just felt embarrassed there and
Yes,
there.
Yeah.
yeah.
And then he said, okay,
So he can't
you
demand
may,
for
may-
that.
you may think that we just picked this, so randomly went to 1, 2, 3, another bag
Yes.
and picked. And it was the
Same.
same story.
Yeah.
It had stones,
Yeah.
it had weevils, the
Yeah.
beans were bad. So they picked the third, and it was the same story. They said, okay, next we have our suppliers from China. So they brought out.
Yeah.
They are super clean,
Yes.
the right moisture content, there are no stones,
Yeah.
everything is the same color, same size. And so he came back. So he picked some sample to come back with it to Uganda.
Yeah.
To
By the
show how
time he
good it
reached-
should look like.
Before he reached Entebbe,
Yeah.
some of these weevils had even produced. So
yeah. That is what actually I feel.
It's a real story.
Yeah, yeah. yeah. If
and,
you
and
look
now
at that report, it's
that
very damning.
destroys
Yeah.
the image of the entire country.
Exactly.
Even if Leandro,
Yeah.
somewhere in Gulu, you're producing something good,
Yeah.
they say no, the Ugandan brand.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
So,
And
so
it
you
is
as
very-
members of parliament and whoever is
So that is where we need to also invest, especially in these silos. At what technical capacity can we make them, be acceptable in terms of international standard, so that when you export, you have exported, but not to say you return 80% and then 20 is taken. Actually, if you look at the report from European Union on the goods return, it's not good for this country. So I think we need to put a lot of emphasis while we are talking about this.
for me, my worry, Godby, is
Yes.
okay, if those guys are able to see that this is wrong, but we are busy consuming. At least for the beans, you can say these are stones, this is what.
Aflatoxin is
but
dangerous.
for the maize flour,
Cancer
Yeah.
itself.
you cannot
It's
see it.
cancer.
So what are we eating?
The
Godby?
groundnuts.
No, I mean, we've been able to survive COVID. Maybe that's why we can eat.
Okay, I hear we have. It was not yet time for the phone
Yeah.
calls, but I hear we have somebody online. Bahati is okay. The Honorable David Bahati, if you can hear me, somehow there was a connection, loose connection there. We didn't conclude very well, but please, I'm giving you this opportunity to conclude your points and maybe respond to this gentleman in the studio.
Well, thank you very much, Kamara. Though I have not very well listened to what they were saying because of the connection. But
Okay.
The issue of the Nyoga, these are enterprises, as I said, people who are in different states that government needs support. The people, the young people who are in wealthy, the young people who are in certain states, the youth, the women group, in the villages. This is what we have called a Nyoga, and these are things that we think that will help the population, especially out
There's a
of
Nyoga in English
the
word.
pandemic situation. And I think that what the president emphasized, I've heard somebody say that the president said that these are proposals of Minister of Finance. And the president said the Minister of Finance will be giving more details at the budget speech. And indeed, next week we shall be giving more details. For example, if we talk about the tax relief, issues to give relief to people who are paying interest on the taxes, we need to prepare the bill. So these bills are going to...
So Honorable Bahati, for the issues of the young people, why do you have to bring the Myoga thing? Yet you also know you have the Youth Livelihood Program, which is dealing with young people who are involved in entrepreneurship. And you also have the Women Fund. Why not put more money into those platforms that you know have been tried and tested? In fact, the other day they were saying that even the recovery rate is impressive. Why start another?
Yeah, so the Youth Livelihood Program is a revolving fund. So the money that is already in the revolving fund will continue. The money that's in the Women Development Enterprise will also continue. But at the same time, these people, if you go to Zambia, those people who are in the carpentry, those people in the welding in the factory, and other places across the country, will require resources, keep money that can help them. So there is no competition. Actually, all these programs complement each other. They complement each other. This is a targeted program for people on lower cadre, people that need cheap money to help them in the areas where they are involved. So we don't see any contradiction. And as I said, the tax relief will be, we are proposing, we are making the necessary legislation and we'll be taking them to Parliament for approval. This includes the Department of the Corporation Tax, a Department of Pay As You Earn, relief of interest and penalties on people who have not been paying tax. And the President has talked about deferring payment of loans for a number of years. So we think really these policies will make our economy stronger and more resilient as we come out of this COVID situation. So this is an opportunity for us to do import substitution. This is an opportunity for us to grow our economy. And I think if everybody gets involved, just keep money in UDP, keep money in UDP, Enyoga, microfinance, deferment of these taxes, and focusing on real economy. Remember, we told you, Kamara, when we were approving the budget in April, we said that this budget that we have passed will need readjustment. Because at that time, there were so many unknowns. For example, we didn't know how long this is going to take. We now know that this pandemic might take quite a number of months before we get a vaccine. We know now that the airports will be open after a few months, not very immediately. So at least now we can organize and adjust our budget. That's why you see the President mentioned the 5 billion that can be reorganized within our budget so that we focus on areas that target the real economy, the economy that looks at the basics of Uganda to get people out of the subsistence economy into the modern economy.
Okay, but Mr. Bahati, the way how the economy is performing now, it looks like the numbers are going down in terms of our economic growth figures. And if it actually goes into negative 2 times in a, 2 quarters in a row, then we shall be proper into a depression of sorts.
No, that's why you've seen the numbers actually in the quotation of costs, the issues to do with flowers. The numbers are coming up. And with this injection in the economy, as I said, oil the wheels of the economy, these resources that are investing in and the stimulus will help if it is implemented at the speed, indeed the speed we are looking at, will actually reverse what is happening. That's why the President says, let's focus on the side of being optimistic rather than pessimistic.
Okay, and lastly, if I may ask this also, you seem not to have a very good precedent of, keeping the promise, making good of your promise. For example, when you set a target of producing 20 million bags of coffee, you are below that target by 13 million bags.
The issue of NRM under the leadership of the revolutionary leader, President Museveni, of keeping promises is not in doubt. And I think everybody who is watching this talk show knows that the NRM government, whatever they have promised, they have delivered.
I'm just giving you an example. I'm just giving you an example, Honorable Bahati, that you set a goal that by 2020, Uganda will produce 20 million bags of coffee. You are below that by 13 million bags. Actually, you said by 2020 would be a middle-income economy. We have not reached there. And I'm saying these examples show that you have not been able to make good of your own promise as government?
But by the time we are making that promise, how many bags are we producing and how many are we producing today? We are making progress. That's what we consider progress.
Okay.
We might not reach 100%, but we are moving forward.
Then you don't set a date. You don't set a deadline, Mr. Minister. You don't put a target and say by this timeline, because you have not reached it. In fact, you should appraise yourself, and if you are to award yourself marks on this one, you have failed.
No, we haven't failed because we have actually made progress. Where we were, the number of bags that we are producing, we have added another 1.5 million bags.
Okay.
Which is a big progress. And the assumptions we made at then, where everybody was supposed to be producing, we talked about issues of weather and all this. So we think that forward the target we have set ourselves, we might not have reached it, but at least we are on the right trajectory.
Okay. I thank you very much, because we're going to take a break. If my producer tells me you're still online, that will be good, because after this we'll also be getting other people who will be joining us online to just to call us and tell us what they think. And you're going to see the numbers on the screen. Please pick your phone and call us. Be precise and concise so that we're able to get other callers to call in. And should you disagree with any of these people, please disagree with respect. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Patrick Amara. My guests tonight are Honorable Leandro Komakech, Member of Parliament representing Gulu Municipality, Mr. Godbert Tumushabe from the Great Lakes Institute for Strategic Studies, and we also had on Skype and also online by phone the Honorable David Bahati, Minister of State for Finance in charge of planning. And now we'd want to hear from you. So you're going to see the numbers on the screen. Please pick your phone and call us, and be brief so that we can get as many calls as possible. I already have a call online. Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Good evening, sir. What's your name and where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Soroti. My name is Angarat Paul Godfrey.
Yes, Godfrey, you're on air, and thank you very much for calling in. So if you have a question and you want to direct it to either Mr. Leandro or Mr. Tumushabe, you can tell us, or even the minister. Go right ahead, sir.
Yes. Yes, thank you so much. My name is Paul Angeret Godfrey. I'm calling from Soroti. I am a civil engineer by profession. What I would like to say is, where are we putting money in this country? That is the basis. We are putting it on infrastructure, and that is which hands is that money going? It's going to the hands of the foreigners, the Chinese. They are the ones who are taking this money. We have failed to build capacity for the local people who will have this money circulate. Secondly, in production, the Indians produce in Namave in the so-called industries. But they have come down to retail. Therefore, all the money is repatriated. Thirdly, I would like to say the problem of corruption. For example, in Soroti, we have an industry which was built for fruits. At the end of the day, the farmers were told this factory cannot handle the local production. It loses meaning. I would like to say that Honorable Komakech, Tumushabe and Kamara, I'm grateful for your debate. I've been closely listening to it. But if we do not fix the flow of cash within the hands of the Ugandans, whatever we are putting in money is just meaningless.
Okay. Godfrey.
Thank you.
Godfrey, thank you. Slowly, slowly, like they say in your language, kolosiko choite. But thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So I think he's a civil engineer.
Yeah.
And you know, the issue of the 30% local content,
Yeah.
you know, it's a good thing.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering if you have a
is a
big
good
project,
thing.
for example, you are building these dams and these roads, do we have the capacity even to contribute 30%? Because some of these things are way beyond our league. You don't have the technical know-how, you don't have the resources. How do you pull 30% of a big project? Like, for example, if you're building the Ginger Highway. We can't, can we? You as members of parliament,
Well,
this
I
policy.
think, I think the law was passed. The issue of the national content bill. The president is to assent to it soon, I think.
The local yeah.
Yeah, it was passed. That was 3 weeks ago.
But I think there are some projects where you cannot have.
You see, Patrick, I haven't looked at the final bill.
Yeah.
But essentially, there are mechanisms through which you can guarantee the 30%. So, in other words, you could even say 30% of the local, locally procured surprise
Yes.
should go to the local
But
company.
do you know that a foreign company,
Yeah.
if it is registered in Uganda
Yes.
and has worked here for 2 years, it is considered local.
No. You see, that's what the law does. That's why I'm
but-
saying. That's why
So-
I'm saying the law, normally with local content legislation, the law defines what is local. The specifics are specified in the law. The mere fact that you are registered here, that you have you are locally incorporated here,
Then you are
does
local.
not make you
Local.
a local company.
But that's what it is
Yeah.
now, I think.
No. Because I saw the earlier draft of the bill.
Do you really know what is local in the
Yes,
the law?
absolutely. No, I can tell you that the draft of the bill that was presented to Parliament is a very, very progressive draft.
Yeah.
Very clear proposals on what needs to be done. It's a very good legislation. That's why I'm saying I would want to look at the final one
Yeah.
to see if there are substantial different changes. But essentially, it's good legislation, very clear. I think that the point that our colleague raised is very fundamental.
Yeah.
That what are we doing to make sure that we develop domestic capacity
Yes.
in terms of local companies to be able to engage in these kinds of projects. I have always raised issues with some of the colleagues in the Ministry of Finance. There was a good program at the beginning, I think that was before 2010. The government had moved towards contracting local companies to do the local roads across the country, district roads, community roads. So there was a lot of domestic capacity in road construction that was developing. Now the problem, the way the policy shifts in this country, all of a sudden the chairperson 0C5 complained that you see the money that is being given to these companies was coming to the districts. That's also where we had our small cut. So, and this was toward the elections, and then the president said, no, okay, this money should go to local governments. And that's the time when they bought those fake Chinese tractors and said, we are giving you road equipment. And the things then collapsed. But the most negative impact of that policy shift was to actually undermine and almost kill the local road construction companies. So as a government, one of my problems with the government of Uganda today is that they never think 360. When you are thinking about policy, you think there is what we call a 360-degree thinking. You analyze the policy action 360 degrees. What are the implications of taking this policy decision?
I know of some people who were building, I think a Chinese company building a road from Mubende to Kakumiro to Kagadi, which is a new one of those areas. And there are some people who, local engineers, Ugandan engineers, who got together and pulled resources and equipment so that they would be given like 5 kilometers, to work on the road. And when they finish, maybe they're given another 5 kilometers.
Yes.
But they could really struggle,
I know.
They really struggle.
I know, they struggle.
A bulldozer, just a bulldozer is almost like $400,000.
Yes.
And perhaps you need about 6 of those.
Yes.
And if you want maybe a stone crusher, probably it's not even reachable. But you need to use this equipment,
Yeah.
even to work on a 5 kilometer, stretch that you have been given as part of the local content. The struggle was much. Even though they pulled it off, but they really struggled.
Yeah, but you see, that's why. So that's why I was telling you that putting 100 billion in UDC is no big deal. It's a no-brainer, because that's where you need the money to make sure that for development of local industrial capacity is you can achieve it through UDC. UDC, because this is taxpayer money. It's not a commercial bank. It's not a bank. But it's a government of Uganda agency where we put taxpayer money. We can even take risks with that money because we have a certain development objective.
Agenda.
Yes, we have a certain development agenda. We can use that money, take risk, and get these companies that are organized and said, oh, we want to procure road equipment and all this kind of stuff, and you give them the money, and because they have presented plans on how they can be done. That's how you do. In my view, that's why you do business, and that's how countries have transformed. You don't transform a country by accident or by talking too much.
I'm going to ask for more calls, and then maybe take 2 or 3, and after that, my guests will be able to respond. I have a call online. Hello.
Yeah.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
What's your name and where are you calling from?
My name is Luanga.
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 Okay, go right ahead with your question or comment.
The only thing that members of parliament give thanks is reduce the cost of metro parliament to
Mr. Luanga, I'm sorry, your line is not very clear, so my apologies for that. We cannot make sense of what you're saying, and I have to pick another line. Hello. Hello. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Albert Mukundane from Bushenyi.
You are on air, Mr. Mukundane, sir.
Mukundane Albert from Bushenyi.
Yes, go right ahead.
Yeah. I thank you, Mr. Kamara. My question is about oil. How economic is oil production in Uganda?
Okay. I think you have been that specific, and I'll take that question both to the both guests. They should be able to respond to you. Let me try to take 2 more, and that will be it. I have another call online. Hello.
Hello, good evening, my number 1 presenter.
I'm humbled. Thank you very much. Who is this and where are you calling from?
I'm called Dennis from Natete.
Dennis in Natete, you're on air, sir.
Yeah, for me, I call you my number 1 presenter. Do you know why?
I don't know, Dennis. But should we? Maybe I give you my number and then we talk about it later.
Yeah, I don't know English very well, but the way you intro in, the way you speak in English, I can get you.
Yeah, because it's more or less like Rutoro. So it is neither.
But for me,
oh no, okay. That producer of mine, I think, is not good. Now
Natete has
you
bad connection.
At least he submitted it.
He sabotaged me also. Okay, let me try to take another. But we value you. There was a problem with the connection.
Yeah.
Let me take a last call online. Hello. Hello. Okay. All right, gentlemen. I think there's a question about somebody wants the economic value or the economic. Okay, we'll have a call online. Hello.
Are you hearing me?
Yes, I can hear you. What's your name, sir?
How are you, Kamara?
I'm fine, thank you. Whom am I talking to and where are you calling from?
Yeah, you are talking to George. My name is George.
Yes, George.
From Chiruhura.
George, you're on air. George from Kiruhura, you're on air. Don't mind about the echo. Just go ahead and tell us what you want to say. If you hear echo, ignore it.
First of all, I want to thank you for your production.
Thank you. You're welcome.
My problem is actually with Mr. Godba.
And Mr. Godba is always very negative as far as President Museveni is concerned. I wonder whether he has an option that he wants to share with the Ugandans. Does he have an option? If he has an option, let him tell us so that we can move forward instead of remaining backward. Because Museveni, as far as he is concerned, he's taking us behind instead of taking us forward.
Okay, George and Kiruhura, we thank you very much. Thank you for calling in. But I don't think your analysis is what you have heard from Godba is what I'm hearing. But I shouldn't answer for him, George, because Godba is here. So this is the moment for him to make the record straight. And so for that matter, start with George.
Yeah. Oh, you want me to start with George?
Yeah. Why are you so negative, Godba?
No, I don't know, George. I don't know whether I'm being negative. I only discuss things that are mainly of a policy and developmental nature. I imagine that if there was another president, a Kamara or a George, doing the things that President Museveni and his government do, I would appreciate those they do right. I would definitely be very critical of those that they do wrong. Because you see, for many of us, I mean, President Museveni, we are not related, we are not friends, we are not OBs.
But
yeah.
You're from Muntungamo, you could be related.
No. So the point I'm trying to make is that people have to try to depersonalize these conversations, because the reason we talk about President Museveni is because he's president. Probably if he was not, nobody would be talking about him, maybe. Yeah, so I would want to encourage people to say, no, when someone is president, it doesn't matter who it is, we have to be able to, we acknowledge the contribution that he or she makes, but we have to be very critical of the things that they are not done
If
right.
I could just add one thing, George, I think criticism, either to me or to whoever, or even to yourself, criticism breeds quality.
Yes, absolutely.
So I think we should just appreciate that way. Because if you're not criticized, you can never know. You may just be in a certain bubble.
Incidentally, just to add one thing, I've had other people actually say the same thing. And so I asked them, I said, have I said anything that President Museveni's government has not done right, and you give me an alternative of, okay, you've said this government, this country has failed to transform agriculture, and I can give you growth statistics, I can give you budget allocations, the little amount of money they put into agriculture, I can give you that. So I asked them, I said, do you have alternative figures? Then they don't. And I say, no, if the president says agriculture is important, food is important, then I expect him to put their money. And then he doesn't put their money, of course I remain critical. I'll ask why. But I could also comment just on the question on oil, that the colleague talked about how economically viable it is. The science and the economics tell us that we have economically viable quantities of oil, about 6.5 billion barrels, probably I think close to about 3 billion of recoverable oil. So to the extent that the science and the economics tell us that this is economically viable, I think it's important as a country that we really invest in making sure that we harness this resource, because this is our resource. God gave it to us. The way we are investing in other resources like mining, in agriculture and others. So this is a resource that we should not really spare, to the extent that we can do it well, do it with the highest level of transparency and accountability, and do it in a manner that does not destroy the environment, because our environment is a much more durable resource than oil. So you don't want to invest in oil exploitation and then you destroy the environment. So creating that balance is really what is fundamental to achieve.
Possibly he was raising the issue of the Dutch disease. The Dutch disease, as far as oil is concerned, putting everything there, and at the end of the day, you don't get what you want.
Okay.
So he's just worried. So
our time is out. What's going to be your parting shot?
Well, mine is about, we are in the second, we are almost going to we're in recession actually. You know? So when we talk about stimulus, it should be instant.
Yes. Yeah.
You know.
And if
And that is why it is called stimulus.
And if we have a recession in another
We
quarter
are in a down. We are going down.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we are in a recession.
Yeah.
Actually, in the second quarter of the recession. So what is this stimulus that is going to give us an uphill? That is what now we need next week, and therefore the challenge gets back to President and the Minister of Finance. That next week's budget is a takeoff for resolving these issues that we are on the downturn.
All right.
Yeah. So that is where we need to take seriously. There are those who are still thinking the economy is still normal. We are in a recession.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Briefly, a parting shot.
Incidentally, it's only that we've run out of time, so I don't know what Riandra means.
Negative
the
growth.
next budget. I'm saying the next budget, because the next budget is not effective until July 1. Ordinarily, the stimulus would be money that is being made available today to be able to stimulate the economy. But I just wanted to end by saying I was quite intrigued today, and I hope maybe when the president talks, normally he also talks at the on the budget day. I hope that the president is able to talk about his vision of regional integration in the context of COVID. We've seen all these challenges, and I think that he has been very articulate on issues of regional integration. I think he has been, pushing the agenda, but you can see a lot of slippages, in the process now. I think that the president needs to give assurance to this country that either we are on track or this thing has derailed. I think it's always good to be certain about certain things, because that's the way you get the population to move around this. Finally, again, I was curious that the president didn't talk about the whole issue of the electoral process. I hope that when the members of parliament discuss this, they would be able to look at this issue, because you see, nations have not just been transformed by hardware stuff, brick and mortar, bridges and roads and rails and whatever. There's certain software that inspires a nation, that builds a nation, that brings together a nation, creates value systems. That's what drives transformation. The values, the attitudes. That I don't think that I heard the president talk about it, and I think as a country we are really at on these kinds of issues. We are at a breaking point or in a period of uncertainty, and I think the president needs to assure the country that these things matter as much as the issues of infrastructure and production matter.
You have one more?
Just a footnote to what I said earlier. The COVID-19 trajectory in northern Uganda is alarming. And this, we need to take it with a lot of seriousness. And given the statistics in northern Uganda, because of the border with South Sudan, I think the Ministry of Health and the government of Uganda needs to put a lot of weight to northern Uganda and the corridors that get from Elego to Malaba. And I think that is one area that, as we go towards all these processes of stimulus, that is yet another area where we need a lot of emergency response in terms of government intervention.
Gentlemen, I thank you very much. We thank you for your time. We appreciate your insights because you have added value to our discussion. It's true, our economy, I think, is hurting, and I think the stimulus package is welcome, and maybe some companies will need a bailout of sorts so that you actually give them some real money so that they can come up, some kind of a shot in the arm, because some people now will maybe have no jobs to go back to. Others maybe they are getting like half pay and things like these. But I know Uganda, we've been in a very bad situation before. We've had our tumultuous past. Uganda, we've always bounced back, and I think we can always bounce back. Maybe one other thing I noticed, sometimes we have these policies and they are written in words that other parts of our country cannot understand. When you talk about Kulembeka, people may not understand. When you talk about Bonaba Gagawale, some people in West Nile and other places will say, what is that? Even our telecom companies, sometimes they come up with some of these things, Chabike, and they say Chakabi. You know that there are people who are not following. because we don't have a national language, can't we look for something that is acceptable across the country so that when we talk Myoga, Karamoja and West Nile and Toro and Ankole will understand? Good night and God bless you, God.